to approve the minutes of the board meeting of September 24th, 2020.
So moved.
Moved by Putt,
Second.
second by Kreiser. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Hello, hello.
Very good. Thank you. You're good, Christine? Okay. All right. Any questions, comments, or concerns on the motion to approve the board minutes for September 24th? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is approval of treasurer's report. So I'll turn this over to you, Mr. Putt.
Thank you, sir. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve the treasurer's report for September 2020.
I have a motion to approve the, treasurer's report for September 2020. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Fisher. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
I just have a few quick updates on where we are with cash flow now that we're 3 months into the year. Year to date, earned income tax, which is on average a $3.5 million revenue line item. Our collections are down 16% compared to last year. We budgeted a decrease of 17%. Real estate transfer tax, that 3 months in is doing very well. It's actually up $5,000 year to date compared to last year. So that's good news, but that's a smaller line item. That's typically about $560,000 a year. And then real estate tax collections of $31 million of our budget. It's early, but we do have a benchmark with looking at where we are with collections through the discount period, when normally all the mortgage companies pay for taxpayers who have their real estate taxes paid in escrow. We're down, we're doing better than projected at this point. Again, this is early, only through the discount period, but we're down about, if we would project on the same, our historical collection percentage, we're down about 175,000 from where we would expect to be, but doing somewhere in the middle between where we budgeted and where we normally are. But we'll have another good benchmark when we hit the end of the face value period at the end of October or into November.
Okay. And Darcy, you said that the 16%, what was that on?
Earned income tax, the 1% earned income tax, the school district gets 0.5% of that 1% earned income tax. So that is, very much driven by how well economy.
Yeah, and Darcy, when you say 3.5 million, is that the total for our budget, or that's where we should be year to date, and we're down 16%?
Yeah, that's the total budget. That's okay. We've budgeted less than that this year, anticipating a decrease. But I just wanted to give a frame of reference that on last year we collected 3.5 million. And at this point in the year, we're down 16% compared to last year to date.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda is President's Report, and I have nothing to report this evening. So we'll move on to visitor comments. Just a reminder for everybody that visitor comments are limited to 5 minutes. I'll give you a warning about 30 seconds before the end of your 5 minutes, and ask you to stop at 5. You have to be registered ahead of time for the regular board meeting. So those people that are listed in visitor comments have the ability to speak. So with that, first up is Brian Craig. So Brian, can you say hi?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very good. Okay, Brian, you have the floor.
Excellent. Thank you for having me this evening. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the work that you folks do, as well as all the staff and teachers as well. I wanted to comment on this proposal for half days. I am opposed to what I've seen so far. I'd like to see, hopefully the school can work something out that is more advantageous, in my opinion, to the students and families. I think that the children deserve a certain number of instructional hours a year. We lost a lot last year, and I don't want to see my son who's in 5th grade lose any more hours of instructional hours. I think that's very important. We've fallen behind as a community, as a country, because of this whole epidemic, and in many cases we did have to. However, right now we are trying to catch back up as a community, as a country, and our kids deserve to be able to catch back up, as well as our community. I'm concerned that some parents may have to, leave work early because of this as well. And I know that I look at myself, I've been doing, my office, we issue marriage licenses. We've done last month twice as many as we normally do. People are trying to get their lives back in order, trying to continue to live their lives. And a lot of that means people having to work longer. I know my mom told me she's working every day this month, no days off. Businesses are trying to catch up on the lost time, and our children deserve to catch up as well. I feel like as a community, we've always, found that extra strength whenever we've needed to, whether it's the Great Recession or 9/11. We haven't really shrunk back. We've come together and we've worked a little harder. And I just think that our school, our teachers, they do great work. We have a great school, but we need to find maybe some more innovative ways to deal with this issue, or maybe, just work a little bit harder for a short period of time. We need to catch up. Our kids need to catch up. And I appreciate your listening to my thoughts and considering them. And I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, next person is Ryan Patrick. Ryan, can you say hi?
Good evening.
Hi, Ryan. Okay, Ryan, you have the floor.
Thank you. And I have to second, some of the points that Mr. Craig just made. Like many parents, we have mixed emotions and concern about this proposed plan for elementary students. But when having time to review and reflect, somebody's not on mute.
Karen, can you go on mute? Thank you.
I think what is best for our students is providing our teachers and staff the time to plan, regroup, recharge, so that when our children are in the classroom or even online, our teachers have the energy and resources they need to educate and inspire the students. I get to hear every day what is happening at school. And if you haven't spoken to the elementary teachers or any of the support staff, then I encourage you to reach out to them. After hearing from them, I'm sure you may see things, a little different than just from what we see as a parent. From these tech challenges, creating Google forms from paper workbooks, to simultaneously teaching kids in a classroom and remote, and that continued responsibility to clean and disinfect everything all day long. Many are hiding the fact that they're reaching these burnout points. So I encourage everyone not just to look at it from a parent's perspective, but also look at the one from your child's and the teachers. Teachers' jobs are hard enough, as we've all had a taste of in the spring, and I don't think any of us want to go back to that type of model. So I think it's important that we try this phased approach, or this proposal approach. As we all know, our children don't want mom and dad teaching them, that's for sure. And while this creates a struggle for working parents that need to now find childcare, use personal days, and in some cases, taking unpaid time off, many businesses are doing their best to understand these circumstances. So the ask of many in the public is talk to your employer before taking to social media to blare your frustrations about this. If you look at the other schools around us, half day a week looks so much better than those hybrid models others are using. And lastly, I'd like to say thank you to Dr. Kepler and the administration for your willingness to ask parents our thoughts and listen to our concerns. Most districts do not go to the extent to survey and communicate with parents. So I say thank you for listening to us. I'll finish with one simple question, and this is a slightly different topic, and this is on behalf of my 9-year-old son, his friends, and probably every student in elementary school today. They just want to know if there's any plans to give them recess equipment, balls, or open that playground equipment anytime soon. Because as we continue to hear, recess isn't that much fun.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. We'll move on to Jamie. Jamie, can you say hi, please?
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Okay, Jamie, you have the floor. Go.
Thank you. I want to take this opportunity to thank our administration and staff again, as Mr. Craig and Mr. Patrick did, for the hours of work they've committed to the safe reopening of our schools. As a parent of both elementary and secondary students, I've been amazed at the level of planning that's been required in order to make these first 6. As district after district announced their plans to bring I held my breath. Thankfully, Dr. Kepler and his team found a way to keep our smallest learners in school where they needed to be, in the classroom. Now, as teachers are regularly performing 2 jobs for the price of 1, we need to offer them the support that they so desperately need. One only needs to look at our surrounding school districts to see how lucky we are to have full in-person schooling as an option. As a parent, I know that finding childcare for 1 afternoon each week might be very complicated. However, it could be worse, right? We are so grateful that it's not 3 or more days a week like it is in some other districts, or even half of every single day. Our teachers are required to educate students both in person and online every single day of the week, working twice as hard without a hint of a pay increase. The least we can do as a community is to offer them a few hours each week to prepare their lessons and collaborate with their colleagues. So rather than groaning and complaining about the perceived inconvenience, maybe we could celebrate the job that these fantastic people are already doing and give them a little room to breathe. And that's all.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
Jamie.
you.
Chris, could we check for an answer for Ryan Patrick's question? Is now a good time to do that?
I was going to say we can do that as part of Bernie's going back to action plan or something else.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Just remind us that we have that question, no, Christine.
Mhm.
I have it written down, but just in case I miss it.
Sure.
Okay, next up is Dave Laudermilch. Dave?
Hello.
Hello, Dave. Okay, you have the floor.
Great, thank you. So I just wanted to thank everybody tonight, and thank everybody who signed up to speak tonight, reviewed the plan, and decided to step forward and provide their opinion. All views in the community are valid and should be considered. I understand Mr. Craig has one opinion. I certainly was already aware that I'd seen where on social media he had replied to a poll that somebody put up on Facebook and was a no already. But I don't really know that a social media poll where someone from Cleveland or Shermansdale, the city of Lebanon, weighs in is really important as to what goes on in the district of Palmyra. And that's what we're here about tonight. And I understand over the past months, the launch of the school, even back to last spring, everybody gave a lot of support to our teachers, administration, the staff, everywhere. We're past that point now. We are well past that. At this point, we are at a point of action. The teachers have bubbled up their concerns to the administration. Dr. Kepler has put together a plan that he thinks is good for the community, is good for our teachers, is good for our students. And we need to consider that plan. There's no more time for emojis. There's no more time for inspirational messages. Tonight, we need action. I urge the board to take some action tonight. Mr. Patrick asked about other options, or what else can we consider? I would love to hear a fulsome debate across all board members tonight about their ideas as to what the plan is. But make no mistake, we need to give our teachers some relief. 100%. This kind of feedback just doesn't come out of nowhere. This isn't something somebody dreamed up that we should be doing. This is a grassroots effort that came up, that this is what our teachers need right now. And we need to be able to support them in that. Mr. Craig talks about quantity over quality. How many instructional minutes are we getting? That isn't how we should be viewing our education in this trying time. It's the quality of education that our kids are getting. There's students in the classroom, there's students at home. Teachers have to provide 2 different learning experiences for those children. That takes time. We need to give them that time. So I urge the board tonight to consider this, consider other options, whatever you come up with. But at the end of this meeting, at the end of that section of the meeting, there is a plan that as everybody logs off tonight, they can rest assured that we're going to move forward and support these teachers with actual concrete steps. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Okay, next up we have Candace Hurley. Candace, will you say hi?
Good evening.
Hi, Candace. Okay, you have the floor. Candace? Somehow.
Okay.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay,
I-
go ahead. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I am also a parent here in the Palmyra district. I have children in the high school, the middle school, and elementary school. And I am here to just briefly discuss 3 items. The first one is I have been subbing in the school 2 to 3 times a week since the beginning of the school year. And I want to again applaud and thank the school board, but the administration, the staff, the teachers within the district for everything that they are doing for our children. It is very apparent that things are not normal. They're not the way that they used to be. When I watch the kids have lunch or when I watch them, they can't even give teachers hugs, without being told, hey, we're not doing that right now. And some kids are really in need of those things. And so, but for the way that school is happening, I really applaud the fact that it is as normal as it can be. And I echo that we are very fortunate in this district that it is all day for the elementary school kids. So thank you so much for that. The second thing I wanted to bring up is I wanted to say thank you for the football game. I was able to go and watch my cheerleader cheer at the last football game. And while I understand that there were many or some, I don't know the number, but there were parents that handed out or students that handed their tickets outside the fences. I wanted to say shame on whoever did that. And please don't do it again, because I really don't want to jeopardize not being able to go see my child perform at the games or seeing other children. This is actually the biggest return to normalcy in our lives at this moment. With the kids going to school has been good, but there are still so many things that are different. But going to the football game and actually watching the football players and the cheerleaders was just, it was a wonderful experience. So thank you for that. The last thing that I would like to bring up is about the half days. I have been working with the elementary school teachers, which I believe that all teachers need a little bit of help with the time. I think that the initial note that went out said that teachers are losing 60 to 70 minutes a day that they would normally have to either plan or at least to breathe, because they are with, the teachers are with, I subbed at the middle school, I subbed at the elementary school, and then I subbed a lot with the kindergartners. The teachers are with the students a lot. And so as the administrators and the staffs are working to figure out what they can do differently so that there is a little bit more breathing room for the teachers, I thank the administration for coming up with this idea of the half day. I'm really thankful that you listened to the parents and went with Fridays, since the teachers were a little, they really didn't have a major preference one way or the other. But more than that, thank you so much for offering the opportunity for parents who have to work, or guardians who have to work or cannot watch their kids, or even me. I'm considering keeping my kid at school all day just because I think she wants to do it. But having that opportunity for parents to even have more options. And so I just can't thank you enough for everything that's going on in the district. I have friends all around the United States, friends around the world. And by far, Palmyra District continues to impress me with their care and concern for the community. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of you, to all 9 members on the board, regardless of what I see out on social media. To all 9 members, I say thank you. And then also to Bernie Kepler and his entire amazing team.
Okay, thank you, Candace. Okay, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is buildings and grounds. And Jim, are you covering that one?
You're on mute, Jim.
Jim?
Okay, there we go. It said the administrator had to unlock me. Yeah, so for buildings and grounds, Mr. President, we have a motion to approve the sponsorship agreement between the Palmyra Area School District and ECI Construction in the amount of $10,000 for a 10-year term commencing October 9th, 2020 through October 9th, 2030.
I have a motion to approve the sponsorship agreement between the Palmyra Area School District and ECI Construction in the amount of $10,000 for a 10-year term commencing October 9th, 2020 through October 9th, 2030. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Gaib. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, Mr. President, I also have another motion. I wasn't sure if you wanted to make sure that Dr. Kepler presented any of the updates before the motion, or you want me to go right into a motion in a second?
Bernie, let's start with any updates and then we can adjust the motion accordingly if needed.
Certainly. Effective tomorrow evening are the Commonwealth's new guidelines for mass gatherings, which would involve PIAA, interscholastic athletics. We've updated our plan stating that we will follow those guidelines, which again become effective tomorrow. You can see I left this in track changes so you as a board can see exactly what is being removed and added. We're removing the 25 to 50 or 50% maximums. Most specifically, we continue administratively to recommend the 2 tickets per player for both home and visiting teams as we move forward with soccer and field hockey. As JV parents leave, varsity then can come in or vice versa. Volleyball, we're still recommending 2 tickets per player with that same JV varsity flow. Football, again, nothing, the big change here is happy that we would be able to include our full marching band, where our first home game, we had the full marching band perform pregame, but only a pep band was able to stay. We have provisions for our full marching band to stay for and play throughout the full contest. Our maintenance team has 85 chairs. We're looking at stationing our band after their show behind the north end zone where they can socially distance, and inviting our full marching, 2 tickets for every marching band participant. And that's 85 folks involved with the band. So, and then 160 plus parents. So that really is the extra attendance really flows to those folks. Maintaining our ticket structure. I'm adding, we didn't have the student rate in there, so I felt I better put the $3 in there for students to move forward. And then I thought I would add this just to help reinforce the face coverings. Is currently our plan states that you can, if you're outdoors, our spectators can remove face covering if they're 6 feet or more apart, which still is stated as there. But I think just continue to encourage. I sent a memo out to our participating fall teams and families. I should have went out this morning, I believe, or yesterday. I don't recall specifically, but just helping encourage everybody to continue to work on social distancing, those face coverings, so that we can continue to operate our interscholastic athletics and any pending other extracurricular activities. So that those are the changes. The big one is these 20% capacity is where we fall with the various numbers, whether that be indoors or out. In all of these cases, it puts us fairly close to those capacities. As an example, Friday night football, we're within about 40 tickets of our max. Volleyball, Probably would have, according to our max, could have more. Our recommendation is that we stick to where we're at, is getting parents in to see their children play, but also continue to strive for that social distancing.
So, Dr. Kepler, I have two things. One, and I think this message is getting out, but there's some of us whose children are on the JV team, but also may dress for varsity. I know I've gotten a couple calls from parents about the announcement. Do they have to leave and come back in? I feel like the word's gotten out now, but I mean, just for anybody that's on here, can you please confirm and clarify how that's working?
Absolutely. If a student athlete plays both JV, dresses for varsity, and sometimes gets in, sometimes doesn't, we want those parents to stay for both events.
Okay. I appreciate that. And then one thing that I just noticed in here, and I want everybody to be aware of how appreciative I am to Mr. Weidler and yourself for working with me, and to the volleyball families that, I'm sure are aware of what occurred, but you rescheduling that game so that parents can be there and accommodating that. Very, very thankful. But this thing kind of changes on us on a daily basis. And Mr. Connell, you and I, spoke about this. Is there anything in our plan, heaven forbid the governor does something again on Monday? Do we have flexibility to make some determinations and decisions based on that without having to wait until another formal board meeting for a vote to still allow and work within some constraints, but not be tied up pending a formal board meeting to make any adaptations?
Say, Mr. Kreiser, if the board gives the administration direction with this bullet here, where we reserve the right to reevaluate attendance, if guidance or legal considerations is altered, and the board is totally comfortable in the administration making those decisions, I believe this would allow that.
And I mean, Mr. Connell, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but are you comfortable that statement does enough that, and any other board members as well, I guess, but I mean, I just want to make sure that just the way these things change and ebb and flow daily, like I'd like to be able to have us, let the administration work and receive feedback from folks and do what they need to do, rather than we have to reschedule a volleyball game to wait for a board meeting to occur to approve a formal plan.
But I guess if we use the volleyball as a case in point, right? The problem with the volleyball was that the attendance items go into effect tomorrow, and the volleyball game was originally scheduled for this evening. But the way this reads is that the administration will change as needed if the guidance or legal considerations from the Commonwealth are altered. So in other words, if the governor comes back and says, instead of having 20% of capacity, we're going to go back to the 250-25 rule, right? Then the administration has the capability to change that back. But if I read this correctly, that's not saying that we can, like, so-called stay the way we are, right?
Yeah.
And I think you're kind of asking, like, okay, in the case using, again, volleyball, we should give the administration the option to override that.
That would be what I'm asking, is so that our administration isn't in a position where, even though I'm pretty comfortable that if we'd have gotten all of our board members on the phone, we'd 100% just stayed the course and had that volleyball game and not messed with things. I think our administration was in a bad spot based on the way our policies worded, that I'm not sure we could do that. Right. And I guess, I understand what you're saying, Dr. Kepler. I read it the same way Mr. Connell does, right? That you'd almost be bound to follow whatever guidance comes from the Commonwealth. that you could do that as long as it still abides by the revised guidance. Quite honestly, at times we may not want to follow that guidance, depending on whether or not there's really any legal impacts or consequences to us based on our read and feel for what the community would like us to do. And I don't want you to be in that position of, well, if I do that, then, you know, we're at jeopardy of me violating a policy.
Yeah, and that's from an administrative perspective, as a commissioned officer in the state, you know, taking an oath. If I feel that I need a directive from the board if I were going to violate a direct guideline, order, law, whatever word we want to utilize there. The direction to us as superintendents from the Commonwealth is very direct with those, that you must adhere. That I feel I wouldn't alone be able to stray from those
and so that's where, I mean, again, I don't want to put you on the spot here, everybody, and you know, Mr. Connell, for sunshine reasons and things from what I've been learning over the years, I did not bring this up to you, but my preference, and I would ask my fellow board members, I would prefer if we changed a statement or added a statement in here that gave our board president the ability to give guidance and make a decision and determination based on those revisions in that situation. I don't want to put you in that spot, Mr. Connell, but I don't really know how else to go about this without posting meetings and 48 days to wait, and 48 hours to wait, and take a formal vote on things every time. And I just would prefer us having the ability to say, if we know that the consensus of our board, if, you know, we all know each other pretty well, we know where we generally stand on different things. If it's quite clear that we know, we would have just said, give everybody the 2 darn tickets tonight for volleyball and not worry about rescheduling a game. Can we not have some provision in here that gives our board president the ability to reserve a right to give direction as well?
Interesting proposal. I don't know, and I'll look to Darcy and
you don't have a certificate. You didn't take an oath or whatever.
And I think you're right. You know, I think as a board we're pretty aligned on some of the nonsense that's going on, right? I don't mind being put in that position, but I don't think legally that can happen. That would be something we would have to check with the solicitor. So generally as a board, right, board members can't operate independently of the other board members. And so, you know, I can have a discussion with you, but I can't make a decision without the board. So in this case, I don't know how that would play out. And I don't know if Darcy and Bernie, you have any input to that, but equally as well, even if I did, let's say this could happen and we did override, you know, the Commonwealth's directives, right? That still puts our administration in the hot seat. Right, and I don't know.
And again, I'm aware that I may be asking for something that may never be a situation that ever arises, and I don't want to pick that, you know, 1 in 100 situation and make it the rule rather than the exception. I just think the fact that we rescheduled a volleyball game tonight because the governor issued a doggone guidance that takes effect at midnight, but we couldn't just stay with a policy tonight for a game, and we rescheduled it and inconvenienced the families and the kids and our buses and our schedules and our administration to spend time on that crap instead of focusing on stuff like what's going on in our schools, tests, COVID, getting kids back to school, everything else. It just seems almost obscene to me that any time was wasted and spent on that for an issue that to me is a no-brainer, that we should have just played that darn game tonight, stuck with our policy that every other sport is applying right now. Football will apply tomorrow, but because the governor said 12:01, we couldn't play a game at 7 o'clock tonight. Like that.
No, that's when Kobe goes on vacation.
To overwhelm the board, and I apologize for taking time. We all spend a lot of time, I realize, but
so Bernie, let's
we can do great. If there isn't anything we can do, I'll accept that. But I just think the community needs to understand the position that we're in sometimes, and how our hands are tied by things that politicians do. And there's just only so much maybe we can do in this situation. I'll accept that, but I think I at least have to ask and ask the board to have the discussion.
Agreed. And do we have, does anybody else have an opinion?
I mean, I just would like to echo what Jim said, pretty much verbatim.
Okay. So Bernie, can you follow up with Bob? And
Certainly.
just and again, we'll at least take a look at it, Jim. And, maybe if we can do it, then that solves the problem. But we'll take it from there.
Yeah, the administration echoes your sentiments, Jim and Mike, and that countless time spent on that. 2 athletic directors from 2 different schools, families, for something that is 6 hours later. So, agreed.
Is there a way, Mr. Connell, that we can amend the motion to say approved as is pending further guidance from solicitor on board president authorizations? I mean, I'm okay with it as it is, but I depending on that stuff, again, I don't necessarily want to wait 2 more weeks to make the revision. If Mr. Frankhauser says tomorrow, yeah, we could do that.
Yeah. Darcy, I think I'll lean on you for that one because you're pretty good at the pending pieces. Can you bring that document back up, Bernie, please?
But you're going to put that in the motion, not the document.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think that's fine to have that be pending, pending solicitor advice on an additional provision granting the president authorization to make changes.
To amend the sports activities plan.
Okay, hold on just a second. In the meantime, while I'm trying to type this up.
Did you get all that, Jim?
No. I'm waiting for the text from Chris, and then
I'll send it in the chat in a second. That bullet, though, the district administration reserves the right to reevaluate attendance of spectators, right? In the events, if guidance or legal considerations from the Commonwealth. Given that, and maybe we have the problem solved, but given that we have people handing tickets through fences and things like that, this statement doesn't say you can change, like if people keep violating the rules, right? And you say, okay, from now on, we're only going to do 1 ticket per player. Does that one bullet doesn't necessarily cover you there? Right?
Chris, we've added a measure there where we have rosters, and after the ticket purchase, they have to indicate what player they're there to see. So we're tallying, so there's no more than 2 people getting in per player.
And trust me, it's working, Chris, because I've gotten yelled at about it.
Okay. Good. All right, so just give me 1 quick second here so I can finish this up. In the meantime, Bernie, why don't you answer Mr. Patrick's question about recess?
Certainly. My answer would be, we'll have to, unfortunately, I have to tell Mr. Patrick, we'd have to look at that and review it, is with cleaning of the equipment, balls, et cetera, we would have to devise a plan. Certainly open to it. Love to see it, but it just would take us some time to put a game plan together to see if it's something we could accomplish.
I think that's great that the 9-year-old wanted his dad to ask that question, though.
Absolutely.
Recess is very important.
Hey, Darcy, do you have, can you repeat what you said? Let me see if I captured the essence of it.
Pending solicitor guidance on a provision to grant the president authorization to make changes And that's where I stopped. If you want to be specific, you could put to make changes to the guidelines for spectators.
I like that.
Okay. Let me fix my typing errors here.
I'm sure I can read through it. Trust me, I'm pretty good.
I know it's got to be on that thing though. Okay, so this is what I have. Motion to approve the Palmyra Area School District's updated athletic return to play plan pending solicitor guidance on a provision to grant the board president to make changes to the guidelines for spectator attendance.
You missed a word, to grant the president authorization to make changes to the guidelines.
It's kind of a big word.
Literally and figuratively.
Okay. So Jim, this is going to go in the chat.
Got it open. I'm ready. All right. So for the board and the community at large, I make a motion to approve the Palmyra Area School District's updated athletic return to play plan pending solicitor guidance on a provision to grant the board president authorization to make changes to the guidelines for spectator attendance.
I have a motion to approve the Palmyra Area School District's updated athletic return to play plan pending solicitor guidance on a provision to grant the board president authorization to make changes to the guidelines for spectator attendance. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Putt. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you, Mr. Kreiser. We'll move on to curriculum. Ms. Fisher.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. The Curriculum Instruction Committee met on September 24th. And during that meeting, the board reviewed policies as listed in preparation of a second reading at tonight's regular board meeting. Dr. Spagnuolo provided the board with a diversity committee update. And Dr. Spagnuolo also provided the board with an update from the Act 80 Day. And Drs. Kepler and Spagnuolo reviewed an instructional model proposal with the board. And from that meeting, I have two motions to make this evening. I would like to make a motion to approve the second reading of board policies as listed on the agenda.
I have a motion to approve the second reading of the board policies as listed on the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ludwig. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
There have been no changes to the policies from when I first introduced them.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and I have one more motion. I would like to make the motion to approve an updated Appendix A of the emergency instructional time template required by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, reflecting early dismissal dates on Friday afternoons.
Okay, so before we go into a second, Bernie, you want to go through a more in-depth overview?
Certainly. As this is. coming up, and Dr. Spagnuolo will jump in at various points throughout this presentation tonight. First, want to just say that the administration does not take this proposal lightly. We understand the significance of the recommendation. We do have some alterations to it tonight, and ultimately we feel that the risk of not providing that pressure release valve that I talked about 2 weeks ago for our staff could be a greater risk than having some half days, loss of staff, et cetera. So we'll lead you through this and have a lot of dialogue here this evening, I believe. But in terms of background, when we developed our return to instruction plan, one of our goals was trying to get in-person instruction at the elementary every day. And we achieved that. I think we're one of, not that many schools have pulled this off. Many are still doing at least a full day of asynchronous. A district to our west doing full half days for all kids at the elementary. By having our elementary students with the option of coming in every day, we felt that was of great value to our families. Some other local districts who are also bringing students in 5 days have either configurations or a scope or a district large enough where they were able to carve off teachers to solely teach the synchronous kids, so that teachers in the classroom, they're teaching kids in person and in person only. And I think that's a major factor to consider as well. Of the local districts that I have easy access to communicate with, those that have models like ours are having the same discussions and same struggles with the task of teaching our youngest learners in particular, both in person and synchronously. So most of our teachers, first through 12th, are asked to teach both kids in person and synchronously. And it's simply an incredible demand of time. And I'll talk about what the life of a teacher is as we go through this. But ultimately, as I shared 2 weeks ago, due to students not being able to congregate in the morning, whether they're going onto the playground or in the gymnasium upon arrival and only going upstairs after a certain time, the students go up right away. So teachers have lost time in the morning. Traditionally at our elementary, our kids go from lunch to recess or recess to lunch, and had a half an hour recess where they were covered with our paraprofessionals, and teachers had common planning time with their grade level colleagues. That 30 minutes is lost daily. And then at the end of the day as well, students would start dismissing, and after so many were dismissed, those later buses would go downstairs, congregate in the gymnasium, hallway, cafeteria, and teachers had time there. We compile that together. Because of COVID and not being able to congregate, those teachers have lost 70 minutes a day. Secondary teachers, very similar framework, losing about 60 minutes a day that they have to plan and prepare. I wanted to make sure I emphasize what this is not. I want to be very clear that it is not Palmyra Area School District teachers complaining. They're up for the task. They're doing an incredible job. They're working their tails off. My fear is, can they continue that for the long haul? We also, have heard from some community and concerns, and I understand that sentiment of just work harder, and teachers don't work, they work beyond their contractual time. And I just want to make it clear that the typical teacher anywhere, not just Palmyra, but here, they're working long or much earlier than, let's say, an 8 a.m. start, and much later than student dismissal. They're working from their homes, mornings, nights, weekends as well. And this just compounded that. And I want to make sure I clearly say that too, that all salaried professionals, regardless of the industry, do that. And our teachers are no different. So ultimately, just echoing and appreciating the effort and work that all of our staff are doing each day. And I just continue to emphasize it's about sustainability and our ability to have a full complement of staff. And I'm going to show you a chart here soon that will kind of give you just a direct data point of that concern. And Dr. Spagnuolo pointed this one out to me to add that sometimes if we lose a couple hours of direct instruction on a Friday afternoon, by having adequate time perhaps our teachers are going to be more poised and have more effective instruction because of that ability to have more time to plan and think through their instructional delivery.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big ones that I look at is, and one of our visitor comments had mentioned it, like quality versus quantity. I think at this point, without giving our teachers the extra time that is much needed, I think the quality of instruction we will not see that we have seen in the past, because there's only so many hours in the evening that you have to do the work.
So, and just to reiterate our model, we're asking teachers to do multiple things. Parents have been provided with 3 options. Children can come in person. We'll use the word synchronous tonight. What we mean there is when the children are at home, but they're logging into live instruction. And then asynchronous, where through Cougar Academy, where work is posted and students can work from home at their own schedule. Our elementary is currently 5 days a week with parent options to stay at home for the synchronous, and our middle school, high school currently on that AB rotation. In this proposal, that AB rotation would remain, in the group of middle school or high school students who would be in class that morning would be in on an abbreviated schedule. Those who would be on the off day and are at home, they would log in just like they would, but on that abbreviated schedule. You've heard me use the word sustainability. When we presented our initial plan, we had certain goals in mind. First and foremost, and that remains, is the health and safety of students and staff. There's sentiment out there of trying to get all kids in every day, middle school, high school. I continue to say I don't feel that we have the capacity to do that just with sheer numbers of people. At the elementary, our numbers are in most time comfortable, but we have classes that are, because parents crave that in-person instruction and have brought kids back. So we're accommodating that because we want them in class as well. One of our goals was that maintaining effective instructional model of direct instruction. The days of the continuity of ed had to be put by the wayside and teach kids directly. And in 1st through 12th grade, that's occurring by both students in person and at home. We were, because of having a kindergarten center clustered at Lingle Avenue Elementary, we were able to more readily create a section of kindergarten that is solely virtual. So our kindergarten teachers to date are not having to teach both students in class and at home. And a final goal is that maintenance of school reopening, not requiring us to close. At the beginning of the year, across the Commonwealth, there were several schools or counties that didn't open schools to in-person instruction because they couldn't staff their buildings. And then finally, that teaching candidate and substitutes are in a limited number. And here's some actual data from the National Institute for School Leadership. It was timely, as in my Superintendent Academy last Friday, we reviewed this data. But just take a look at, this is exact data from Pennsylvania. 10 years ago, over 15,000 teaching certificates were issued in a year. Look where we were at in 18-19. This is pre-pandemic. We have a crisis on our hands before teaching in this environment. Nearly a third of the certificates being issued. Hence, emergency certificates are up in the state. So this could be a teacher who's elementary certified getting certified in middle level mathematics, or a teacher who is certified in high school math but gets a tech ed certification under emergency provision. You go to hard to fill areas, high school physics, high school chemistry, 27 certificates across the whole state. Palmyra High School employs 3 alone. Imagine 500 school districts and how many high schools. And there's 27 teachers coming out with a chemistry cert. Elementary, less than half the number of certificates being issued in 18-19 than a decade earlier. And then that transcends to the administrative shortage that we're going to be seeing, 2/3 of the number from a decade earlier. Okay, so that's just one data point that I share with you that kind of embodies my concern of our ability to find replacements. So our proposal, to reiterate where we've been, my proposal tonight narrows from 19 half days down to 16. There were 3 Fridays that I felt comfortable removing. One I think was December 4th, December 18th. And those were the December 4th, as I look to my right at my calendar, comes off of Thanksgiving. December 18th, the following week is just a couple of days. So being respectful of the concerns of losing instructional time and impact to families, those were 2 of the 3 dates that I felt comfortable removing, narrowing it to 16. There's also been some discussion and feedback about, can we try this and see how it goes? So if that's a consideration of the board and a direction that the board would want us to see us take, I've proposed in red dates of a proposal that would take us through to the new year of having 5 half days and allow us to reevaluate teacher growth and teacher needs, reevaluate impact to families. I wanted to clarify that on the afternoons, should we have these half days, students would have the asynchronous work to do, meaning teachers would be providing work for the students. At the secondary level, the classes might be condensed to a half an hour class versus the 72 minutes at the high school, for example. Direct instruction, check for understanding, and then the students have an assignment to do from that class. That now they would have Friday afternoon, Saturday, Sunday, and be ready Monday to have that completed. At the elementary, it might be spending time on Study Island, where they have work that they can do and work on core literacy, core math standards. It might be Freckle, any of the other online formats. It could be reading assignments with follow-up questions, or a math worksheet from something they did in class that morning. So that's how that would work. There would be students would not be logging in. There would be no need at that Friday afternoon for technology. Students would also have the Saturday, Sunday. We did reach out through our social work team to various daycares in the community to talk to them and make sure they understood what we were looking to accomplish, communicate the understanding. So that has occurred. Another clarification that we would make is, what would kindergarten do as we're full half day sessions this year? Our vision is they would alternate. So on these dates, the students who normally come in the morning would come in the morning. These PM dates, these are when afternoon kindergarten students would come in the morning, and the AM kindergarten students would stay home and have their afternoon of sync related work. This takes work with our transportation team's been working and how that all transpires and works. And we'd be working with families to fine tune that prior to October 30th, should the board approve this plan. So I'll pause for a minute to see if there's any questions at this point, knowing I have 4 slides left. If you'd like me to just finish.
Why don't you just finish, Bernie?
Okay. To clarify how we would handle meals, breakfast would remain unchanged. Lunchtime, elementary students, we're looking at brown bag lunches on these days from 11 to 11:30. Students would all be eating at the same time. We would eat in classrooms, large trash cans, and then prepare for dismissal, and students leave. At the secondary, the same thing, brown bag lunches that for secondary students, we would have them take them along with them. It's critical. The more students that take a school lunch, the huge benefit to our food service account, particularly through December 31st with the federal free lunches. Every student takes that brown bag lunch. We might put it in their hand as they walk out and ask them to take it, as it only helps our bottom line. Transportation would remain unchanged in the morning, except for a Friday where PM kindergarten would come in the morning. Our regular transportation would occur at 10:30 for secondary and 11:40 for elementary. And the CTC, and this is the norm when we have half days that and we have various, every year we have certain half days on our schedule. CTC students at the end of the day get bused back to Palmyra High School only. And then they work with family or friends to get home from there because our other buses have already done their routes. That's been years and years of that practice. Parent survey. We had, I want to say, over 1,800 responses in our first survey, and then just did the second survey regarding child care concerns. And two things that were discussed. The first one was working families and child care. So we put out a survey to our parents of elementary students, and as of with an 11:40 a.m. dismissal, we wanted to see how many families indicate they need to have their child stay to be monitored by our paraprofessionals. And you see the numbers in that survey. I think it was 47 students. There was an update. Lingle now has 19. I checked right about 5:50 before our meeting started tonight. So we have 48 students whose families have responded to that survey stating that they would like their son or daughter to stay until 3:45. That is clearly doable. I do want to make it clear that our intent is not to have students, unfortunately, stay because they want to. It's really we have no other options. We don't want to get too many students, or we frankly wouldn't be able to manage that. This would be two working families, an inability with no family in the area, friends, support structures in place that really we would work with those families to try to make this happen.
So Bernie, just a quick question then.
Yes.
48 children, right, have said, or at least their parents have said that they're interested in this. I hate to use childcare, but
yeah, please don't.
Yeah. When do parents have to get back to the district to say, I want to participate?
We would have, our intent would be, this was a survey. Our intent would be to issue something out to families as soon as possible, that they would have to return that to us. If we're looking at October 23rd, we would need those back probably by, we'd get those out tomorrow and have them back by the end of the week, next Friday.
So there's limited capacity, right?
That's correct.
So what happens if we exceed capacity?
That's one of our challenges. We will do whatever we could to try to expand that. We have to keep in mind the social distancing. Our intent would be to use our cafeterias at the elementary, as they wouldn't be utilized that day, so they are disinfected. Use the gymnasiums for breaks, being able to take kids outside for a mass break and then come back in and continue on their work, et cetera. But if need be, we would try to find alternate locations in the buildings. But to be totally honest, we would be limited in that. I wouldn't be able to take hundreds of kids.
Understood.
Well, and Mr. Connell, just to add a little bit, a few parents that responded yes to that they needed daycare are stay-at-home moms. So I think we need to be careful who we're allowing to stay as well, because this is really intended for two working parent households.
All right. Okay.
So that's a good point, Dr. Spagnola. So, do we need to set up as a precaution in the event we get too many sign up? Do we have to have a set of criteria or requirements of, if we get too many, we're going to have to vet you then based on these criteria so that we can get the number down within whatever limits based on capacity that we can support?
I think the more we lay out up front, the better off we're going to be in the long run.
Correct. I don't think we should ask them to sign up and then Monday before the 23rd, we say, well, we didn't take you because we believe this. I think we need to spell out that here are criteria we're going to go by. If we're all within the limits, then so be it. But if we exceed these thresholds and these limits, we are going to go through and vet and review everyone and ensure adherence to these criteria. And if you don't meet those requirements, we're going to have to ask you to still find alternate means.
No, agreed.
I just don't think we can do it after the fact and apply a rule after they do that. I think we have to say right off the bat, these are the criteria we're going to apply if we think there's any risk whatsoever of having to turn people away.
Agreed.
Does that make sense or not?
Certainly.
Well, and would the board be agreeable to, if, say, we have too many, that one time a month their child could stay, and the other time they would have to get other, so that we're allowing every child to, you know, take advantage of staying at school and getting that additional help? Like, I don't know that we'll get to that, because honestly, I think when push comes to shove, most parents do have alternate. Not all, but I think a lot of them have neighbors that'll say, I can watch your kid, good friends that say, just have them come to my house, things like that. But if that would be the case, I wouldn't want the same family to be able to take advantage of this and then have some families not be able to at all. So.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a problem if we exceed our capacity numbers, right? And if you have some guidelines you have to put in place, so be it, that's fine. But I think there's, a number of people that, most people, both parents do work, right? And if you're a transplant from another area, typically you don't have family anywhere close. Knowing that's what we did here, right? We don't have any family here within 50 miles, so it's very difficult to get somebody like your kid. So
sure.
I think this for me is one of the things that is most important, right? Because even talking about this 2 weeks ago, having the ability to have your kids stay at school and not have your work life disrupted, if at all possible, should be the way we have to handle this.
Yeah, and just to make sure I emphasize it as well, this was until our 3:45 is the typical end of the workday for our support staff that would be with the students. So I do want to make it clear that clearly not everybody's workday ends in a time where they can get to us at 3:45. So there still could be an impact.
Yeah.
Remiss if I didn't make sure that was clear. Okay. The half day on Friday, again, we've talked about this. I don't want to belabor it, but greater efficiency and effectiveness is our goal. And then that maintenance of staff. And finding a full complement of teaching staff is paramount. We're worried about that each and every day. If a teacher is quarantined, if they're out sick for something not COVID related, we're already having days where we don't have substitutes available. Some other things we've talked about, we're utilizing our in-service days. Next Monday is a planned in-service day. Our teachers have that day that we're doing some training and, again, additional planning and preparation, as is the case with January. Some of the March in service in November are centered around parent-teacher conferences, which we'll be rolling out to families, the plan there for a virtual conference time slots. We've talked about the rotation of can we just have freeing up teachers to have some of our paraprofessionals move in and out of classrooms, giving teachers time to work, while they cover students in that capacity. And that's in that capacity, we run into potential certification issues and just a lack of ability of enough people to do that. Plus, if they're doing that, they're not doing their regular jobs during that time. And we've talked.
Our paras, we decreased our paras at the elementary school to balance the budget this past year. So we have, from having 5 paras at each elementary building, we only have 4. So that limits that as well.
So, and we also looked at 2-hour delay schedule on occasion, and just felt that there wasn't enough time to justify that. I'll use the bang wasn't worth the buck language there. which that really brought us to our recommended proposal based on the review of those pros and cons. So again, I literally would just reiterate that this is the last thing we wanted to do. We wanted a 5-day school week for our Palmyra students, again, at the elementary, and we wanted a full 5 days with AB in our secondaries. Most secondaries that are doing that have a full day of asynchronous now. And again, many at the elementary in our region have a full day of asynchronous or even half days of school. So ultimately, we're asking for what teachers in a lot of districts are getting. And again, those that have models similar to ours, the superintendents have been right there having conversations with me. What are you doing? What are you proposing, et cetera? So that ultimately is, again, I'll go back to that slide of our proposal, is where we're at this evening.
So Bernie, can you go back to slide 11?
Sure.
So as Mr. Craig said, right, he's concerned that instructional hours are going to decrease, right? And, given that we're having a half day on Friday, let's say, and kids can use that time to do essentially, for lack of a better term, homework, right? With perhaps some guided help from those that stay in school. But others would need that kind of help over, either Friday afternoon from their parents or over the weekend. That's still, half a day of actual instruction, right?
Yes.
So when we say greater efficiency and effectiveness, how is that collaboration or that planning time or that 3 hours going to be made up in instruction time?
Certainly, I think that the intent of, let me answer some of your question this way. Pre-COVID, what we're doing would not have been allowed under school code. It's also allowed under the pandemic, which is why the motion before you tonight is to approve the instructional time template that's allowed during the pandemic. School code requires the 180 days, but also 900 hours of instruction at the elementary and 990 hours of instruction at the secondary level. So we have to factor that out every day or every year when we have snow days, early dismissals, late starts. We have to subtract time and make sure we're still adhering to those hour requirements. Under the pandemic, the asynchronous hours count as instruction, and that's what you would ultimately be approving tonight, if you would approve any half days. The direct instructional time would decrease. However, we feel that with our teacher collaboration, teacher time to prepare, we feel that there is enhanced and improved instruction, and again, ultimately the sustainability. If we don't have staff, we're down direct instruction automatically. I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, just an example too, Chris, or Mr. Connell, one of the things at the elementary school is we have a lot of internet, Study Island and Raz Kids and Freckle for Math, and a lot of internet apps that students have to do. Should a half day be approved, then instead of the students doing some of that while they're in school during the week, they would then be assigned that at home on Friday. So they wouldn't actually lose direct instruction. They would just change when they're doing the apps that the kids can do independently at home, if that helps.
Got it. That makes sense. That makes sense. So the independent learning, let's say, that we use the apps for, we wouldn't be taking up traditional instruction time to do that normal class day time. That would be then become the assignments, and we'd replace that with real instruction time.
Correct.
Okay.
I have a question. If there is a snow day or a couple days of snow day on a week that there is a half a day on a Friday, what happens then? Do we not have the half day on a Friday, or, I mean, then we're missing out more time.
Yeah, I think we could certainly look at that. That was one of the questions in our survey as well, that, a 2-hour delay, it frees up some time that we could revisit those and, to preserve time, cancel those half days.
I mean, the parents are having to find alternate care, for the snow days, and then to add, this other half day. I think that's really asking a lot for the working parent.
Yeah, and I would just go out. I'll get the conversation started as usual, Mr. Connell. But I haven't put some thought into this. I think it's a good idea. I think that we have to, though, be receptive to the concerns of the community. We have to be open to what we don't know and unintended consequences. And so for that reason, I'm in favor of the pilot program. I have a good friend on this board, Mr. Geib, who knows more about the teacher impacts of things. I tend to look at this myself personally. Admittedly, no kind of teaching or educational background, academic environment, but I tend to think of this much differently in terms of the impact for an elementary teacher versus high school. What an elementary or first grade teacher deals with kids being in their classroom in the morning, to me is vastly different than, my daughter going to high school who's sitting on her cell phone when she gets there, right? I could be wrong, and I need some time to be able to dialogue with Mr. Geib and others who understand some of those nuances better than I do. But I don't want to lock us into parents having to make choices and decisions for a full year. All the things that, Susan just brought up. What about snow days and what it would be like over the winter? So, for that reason, the same way we did our whole hybrid model on a let's do 3 or 4 weeks and we'll revisit it and make a decision again. For all of those reasons, I would prefer and be in favor of moving forward in the pilot program. Let's give it a month. Let's learn. Let's see. Quite honestly, for all we know, a month from now, who knows where we'll even be. And our, some teachers at different levels. And again, I got to talk to Larry about this to understand the nuances. But, to me, some levels of education, they may be able to use that time. And by the time we get to early December, they're now in a groove and can move. And, this isn't the impact that we think it's going to be long term. They need to get through this initial growing pains and the obstacles. And once they get the feel for it, we'll get moving. And again, maybe that might not be the case for elementary or middle school or what have you. I don't know. But because of those unknowns and wanting to be receptive and learn and see what kind of impact it does have on the community, I'm in favor of that pilot approach.
I'd like to go ahead.
Question here. The snow day process has been brought up. At least in the secondary, the middle school and the high school, that's a non-factor anymore, right? The educational process will continue because they will simply be using the computers at home and that particular procedure, right? So the only real problem might be the elementary, at least, and I'm looking at this in a perspective of not losing any educational time.
You're correct, Mr. Geib, and the district has applied for what is known as flexible instructional days, or we're calling them FIDs. And you're allowed 5 once we gain approval. We're still working through that approval process with PDE. But up to 5 days a year of snow days, we could be flexible and do those days virtually for all learners, or in hard copy work, et cetera. The approval process requires us to guarantee every learner has access to instruction on those days, much like we had at the middle school when we had the water main break and we flipped a switch and had 100% of our students at home online that day. We were able to do that because of the pandemic and AB and are being poised to do that. So snow days would take on that type of scenario.
Thank you.
So couple things. I would be, I think, much more in favor of a pilot program. Seeing here almost 2 months of days there, I think that having a slow and measured approach to this and being able to revisit it after the 4 or 5 weeks of this that we could do, I think would be the best approach. I don't think that any of us really went into this thinking that there wouldn't have to be adjustments somewhere along the line. I mean, this is just another one of those adjustments, in my opinion. I would like to ask a couple of questions. With the CTC, I'd like to get, those parents that are going to be directly affected by the CTC, kids coming back and having to find that transportation. How difficult is that going to be? I know that is the normal course of action on half days as it is now, but we are adding 4 half days. What kind of impact is that going to have on those kids? And obviously it doesn't have to be answered right now because you won't have that answer. But we also had the, what was it? I think it was called the SAC program, where the kids were typically staying after hours, correct?
That's correct.
Are those kids, I mean, we probably have a list. Would those kids be a good place to start as far as, vetting those parents sort of ahead perhaps of other parents because they already were part of a program that involved a lot of that sort of extra care. I don't know how many of those parents responded to the survey. It might be interesting to kind of correlate those kids with the people that did respond. Maybe they were able to find care, but I mean, those seem to be right off, for me anyways, a good place to start with having extra time set aside for those kids after school on those half days. And how are we going to monitor the greater effectiveness, and how are we measuring that? I mean, are we looking to measure that? In the past we've asked for different metrics. If we're going to give it to the folks, I mean, it's nice to be able to give it to them, but what are we getting back as a district from that time? I mean, are we expecting better test scores? Are we expecting just better job satisfaction? I mean, what are we looking at? Greater effectiveness and greater, what was it, efficiency, I believe is the other one. What are we looking to measure that? Are we just effectiveness and efficiency? I mean,
Jeff, can I just say something here?
Sure.
When I'm looking at this, I'm looking at survival. I'm looking at being able to maintain the system. So thinking about better test scores or things like that's kind of pie in the sky. We need to get through this crisis. We need to keep our people as stable as we can. And I think that we're going to measure this by survival and by maintaining what we're doing. And I don't think we can, although under normal circumstances, the things that you're saying are very practical, not under this circumstances.
I would add, Mr. Putt, I do believe we need both qualitative and quantitative metrics when we look at this. I think clearly we're going to have qualitative feedback from teachers. What are they seeing and what are they feeling? How has this improved their ability to effectively instruct our kids? I think from parents as well, what's their general feedback? And then some quantitative metrics, attendance. What are we seeing attendance of students on these days? Are kids coming to school on the half days? or are they just saying, I'm just staying home, I'm not coming in at all? Attendance and sick leave of staff and tracking data across our district. Our teachers using less leave, and are there patterns that we can draw from that? Or some of the first things come to mind.
That's all I'm asking for, Larry. I'm not trying to, and I understand where that, I'm totally in favor of this, and I believe it's completely necessary. I just want to make sure that, that we're not having kids, that we do have kids on Friday afternoons signing on and doing their work and getting that instruction time. I would just want to make sure that somebody's out there tracking it. I want to make sure that, we're getting feedback on that we're not just, these kids are not just, well, it's Friday afternoon, done.
Yeah. Understand.
And I'll go back to that. And we did look at feedback from the survey. As I was really hesitant and am continuing to be hesitant to use Fridays. I think Wednesdays sounded better, felt better to me, and that I think they would be more productive. But we did hear over 70% of our families said Fridays would work better for them. So we did listen and move to Fridays. Our teachers were split. I expected our elementary teachers to say Wednesdays, and that was split. We actually had more elementary teachers that wanted Wednesdays or wanted Fridays than Wednesdays, and same at the secondary level. Albeit, I think at the teacher level it was 36% said Fridays, 32% said Wednesdays, and that remaining 32% said no preference. So it was really split there. So moving to the Fridays was clearly listening to our stakeholders in the community.
I do think, Larry, I don't think it's about test scores, right? But I do think we need to know if it's having the impact, right? So to Bernie's point, if we still have teachers and staff calling out, then this isn't working anyways, right? I mean, if the intended consequences, we're doing this so that they get the time they need, so that they can stay above water, not feel overwhelmed, but they're still taking more time off than we have in the past, or unanticipated days and things like that, then this isn't having the effect that we're hoping it has anyways. So
well,
I think,
Jim, I really don't know about that, because again, you're using normal conditions to judge this. We're trying to simply maintain the system in a unique situation. So I just don't know that you can say that that's going to be the case. Now, if I was still on the staff, I'd want the Wednesday off because it's the middle of the week and you get energized again. But I also understand the parents in the community saying it might be easier to get, taking care of the kids on a Friday. So I totally understand that. I think people are still going to be stressed out. People are still going to need to take some time off, but at least this is helping to, if nothing else, make it a little more stable, knowing full well we're still going to have problems. But how much worse could it be if we don't do this? And I think it would be a lot worse.
yeah. And my only other question I would throw out there, Bernie, I would like to know and understand this asynchronous learning. How is it going to be integrated in anything that's related to grading? We made some mistakes in the past of saying this is what we're doing and it's not graded, and then it was graded, and then because kids hadn't done any work, we said, well, even if you don't do anything, you get a 60%. We need to communicate that up front, if, how, when, and where, and why any of this learning is going to be integrated into grading. Otherwise, I don't know what high schooler anyways is going to do anything. We already know of high schoolers that didn't do anything in the past because they're going to pass regardless. And if that's our choice, that's okay. I think we need to better understand and learn from that in the past and make sure we're clear on how this learning is going to be incorporated into any grading or related such things. Because I think we've learned that if we aren't going to say it's graded, Larry, you tell me if I'm wrong, but if we're going to sit there and say it's just this extra work that you do, they're not going to do it.
You're right. Elementary might, but high school kids aren't going to do it.
Yeah, and that's where I said I don't
Middle school,
understand
high
all
school.
those nuances, but
Yeah.
I think for most, middle school, high school, certainly, I just don't know that they're going to do it.
Yeah.
I think the intent of what they would be assigned on those asynchronous days would be graded, practice, things like that. We're not going back to what we did continuity of instruction from March to the end of the year where things weren't graded at all, Mr. Kreiser, that they would definitely be held accountable for the work that they're being assigned.
Okay.
Yeah, no difference in them giving. Go ahead.
Go ahead. My thought for 6 through 12, I gave the example for elementary, but my thought 6 through 12 is every class would still have class in the morning of those half days. So they would be doing the teacher-led instruction, the lecture, the practice, and then when they went home, the kids would then be doing their own practice. They would be extending their learning when they're at home. So they would be getting the instruction in the morning. So the classes would all occur. They would just be maybe 15 minutes shorter, 20 minutes shorter. And then the expectation was when the kids went home, they did the work that they would have done had they had the block scheduling. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dr. Kepler, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you went exactly what I was going to echo. So
It's hard when we're in different rooms. Sorry.
not a problem.
Any other comments, feedback?
Again, I just want to echo once again is the last thing, and I feared this, is an ill sentiment towards our professional staff, and that we're simply looking to provide them what many of our neighbors and schools across the Commonwealth are doing. And in many cases, there's a full day. Some of those, a district nearby that on Fridays, the students at their high school have 15-minute classes, and then the teachers have the rest of the day to plan and prepare. Here we're looking, roughly at half an hour classes at the high school as an example, and until that 10:30 dismissal, and then the staff having that afternoon, again, much like peers in many other systems.
I'd just like to make one more comment here and point out and add to some of the comments that we've made about teachers and their workload and everything else. I'm not sure if we can really understand what's going on here unless we walk a mile in their shoes. And right now, it's not about the age of the student in the classroom, regardless of the age or the level of the student. Teachers are double tasking, triple tasking, quadruple tasking all day long. And like Mr. Geib said, that starts to take a toll on teachers. And so I support this model 100%. And I'd like to personally thank our teachers. I know what you're going through. I appreciate everything that you're doing for our students in the district. And I certainly hope and I know that you'll use the time and appreciate it as well. Thank you.
Okay, so anybody else? Okay, so what I heard from Jeff and Jim is that they would support a proposal up to December 11th.
That's what I'm in favor of, Mr. Connell. Yes, I'd like us to be able to learn, adapt, grow, and make sure we better understand the impacts and unintended consequences and be able to get that feedback from the community on how things are going before we commit to anything year long.
Okay.
I agree.
So then do we amend the motion? Would my recommendation would be up to 12:11 and either at I don't know what, I guess it's 12:10, 12:03, whatever the board meeting is before then, either the 10th or the 3rd.
It was the
whatever.
third due to reorg.
Yep. Then we can have a further discussion to extend it. Sound good?
Okay.
All right. So I do have a motion on the table. Okay. As the current motion reads, and I want you to be careful here, don't second this, but as the current motion reads, okay, we need to modify that motion in order to say up to December 11th. So I have a motion on the table. Current motion that Christine made. Again, please do not second this, but is there any seconds? Okay, so since I do not have a second on that motion, would somebody else like to make an alternate motion?
Mr. Connell, I would make a motion to approve Appendix A of the emergency instructional time template required by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, reflecting early dismissal dates on Friday afternoon, as indicated on slide 8 for a pilot program through December 11th, 2020.
Okay, hold on just a second. Okay, so I'm just going to simplify it a little bit, Jim. I'm just going to keep that up to Friday afternoons, up to and including December 11th, 2020. That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And just to reinforce this, we're going to be looking about that time what we're going to do for the second half of the year.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it makes sense to break it then rather than commit ourselves to something in the second part of the year, which may not be reality.
Correct.
And at that point, again, Larry, I just think we're learning. Maybe elementary needs something different. We're
Right.
doing a one-size-fits-all right now.
Yep.
I'm in favor of trying something. I'm with you. But I also, just in my heart, I feel like there's just a difference. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's a difference in a first grader and a teacher who has a bunch of 18-year-olds walking into the room early, going
And-
on their cell phones. I just feel like there's a difference.
Any harm to break it off then and rediscuss it.
Right.
We could do anything.
Absolutely.
Correct.
So Jim, since you're going to make the motion, that I just chatted you the official motion.
Yep. So I will make a motion to approve an updated Appendix A of the emergency instructional time template required by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, reflecting early dismissal dates on Friday afternoons up to and including December 11th, 2020.
Hold on just a second. I have a motion to approve an updated Appendix A of the emergency instructional time template required by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, reflecting early dismissal dates on Friday afternoons up to and including December 11th, 2020. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Geib. Any further questions, comments, or concerns?
No, I don't agree with it.
I don't either.
I think there's too much uncertainty with what's going on.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, hearing no others. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Aye. Opposed.
Okay, so I had two. I had Mike. Karen, I assume you're opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Anybody else?
Susan.
Okay, so I have 6 for, 3 against. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to staffing and administration, Mr. Geib.
Okay. We met on September 24th, 2020. And we had the second reading of board policies 904, which is the public attendance at school events, and 907, school visitors. And I believe that the headings also were the same as what the related policies were once you took a look at them. I know this was a concern that Jim had at the last meeting. There was no public comment, and there are some motions
Well, all
that
right.
we have to deal with.
Well, can you write them down on a piece of paper? You do them over?
Okay. There's a motion to approve the second reading of the following board policies, policy 904 and 907.
So I have a motion to approve the second reading of the board policies, policy 904 and policy 907. Do I have a, 907. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ludwig. Did anybody look and make sure they were all correct?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just me again, Mr. Connell, but on my, I mean, I'll gladly share my screen with you on Zoom, but maybe I'm not understanding.
Well, the policy that you had questioned, Dr. Kepler sent us with the
Right, but what's on our agenda tonight again, I'm hoping is
okay.
different when Bernie pulls up that one there than what I have on mine. Because mine
Okay.
again is going to have a definition of tobacco products,
Yeah, that's what I have on mine.
Yeah.
vaping, illegal use of drugs, law enforcement
That's
incident
not the
reports,
one that,
and service animals. And I don't think that's what we're supposed to be looking at.
It is not,
Nope.
Mr. Kaiser. Apologies. That is in the board docs system, so we will have to tidy that up. I'd recommend that
table that.
you table that.
Yeah, although we were sent the correct one at home.
We were, but what's in Agenda Manager?
You're right.
You're approved.
Right.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
what was sent to me was great, Larry. I'm
Understand. You would have been fun to have in class as a student.
So just to keep this simple, I'll ask for anybody in favor, and hopefully nobody says aye, and then therefore the motion won't carry, and we'll have it on the next regular board meeting. Right?
I can hardly wait.
Okay. Maybe the third time's a charm.
Absolutely.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed. Okay. All opposed, motion doesn't carry. I think that's probably the first time ever that everybody agreed for a non-carry, but that's good. Okay, carry on.
Okay.
I'm very much in favor of the no tobacco policy, though. I really am.
Yes. Well,
Just in a different number, that's all.
well, when I was a teacher, I had a lot to do with creating that policy. So let's put it that way.
Okay, so
Okay.
let's move forward. We're
Let's move on.
2 hours in it.
Yeah, okay. Now, we have a motion to approve the staffing and administration committee items as noted in the staffing and administration consent agenda. And Dr. Kepler, I'm going to turn that over to you again to review any new items that are on there.
Thank you, Mr. God. So you'll see new hire for a need for a short-term substitute from October 5th to 24th. A mentor for that substitute. You'll notice professional services with our shortage of speech and language pathologists. We have a retiree who is able, with PCERS due to emergency, able to come back and is able to give us some time. So you see that contract provision. It's a 1099 situation, so a private contractor. Support staff new hire, a nurse assistant for Pine Street Elementary.
Awesome.
And approval of an MOU with Palmyra Area Education Association for the inclusion of an optional choice blue health plan. That's we feel is a win-win for both employee and district.
Any questions, comments, or concerns?
No, I would just say kudos to the administration for finding a nurse assistant. I think those positions are ridiculously hard to find and fill, and I couldn't be happier to see that on here. So thank you very, very much to the administration, Noel, Darcy, all the work there, Dr. Spagnola, Dr. Kepler, just
Dr. Steplock, in large part working with pupil services. Thank you to Kathy.
Oh, great.
Thank you, Kathy.
Great. Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, do I have a second on the motion to approve staffing and administration committee items as noted on the staffing and administration consent agenda?
Second.
Second by Putt. Any other questions, comments, and concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, the next meeting for staffing administration is scheduled for Thursday, October.
Larry, still have a motion.
Still got one more, but
oh, geez. Okay. I love you guys. Okay. Motion to approve the rate of $155 per day for substitute nurse covering during the term of the current pandemic.
I have a motion to approve the rate of $155 per day for substitute nurse coverage during the term of the current pandemic. Do I have a second?
Second, Ludwig.
Second by Ludwig. Since this is an added item, I don't know, Darcy or Bernie, if you want to add anything to it.
I'm happy to. See Darcy trying, but she's muted, so I'll beat her to the punch. Policy 405 authorizes the board to increase rates for hard to fill positions. Our nurses, certified school nurses fall within the collective bargaining agreement of our teaching staff. So they, although this isn't specifically in the bargaining agreement, the substitutes fall in line with a teaching substitute and makes $110 a day currently. We've in our nurse shortage, the board has approved contracts for third-party vendors to provide us with nurses when we can't find a substitute, and that's at the tune of $47, $48 per hour. So we've worked collectively with our current nursing staff so as not to offend them, and with our current nurse substitutes on a rate that we feel is more fair to them. They seemed appreciative for. And clearly saves us money versus $47, $48. So this meets that demand with the people that give us their time more routinely. Because right now we're just not able to get them.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? So I'm glad you got to work and get that figured out, because this is a hard place for us with the substitute nurses.
Agreed. That rate's even a steal for a nurse.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Now I'm done.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Geib. So last item on the agenda is adjournment. So at this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I think I got Mr. Geib on the move.
Second.
Second by Kreiser. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned. So we'll move into our committee meetings, and the first committee meeting is Buildings and Grounds.
Mr. President, Karen and I are going to check out. We're on the road with bad reception, so we're going to miss the committee meetings.
Okay, if you guys need a follow-up or anything, just let Bernie or I know.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Karen.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thanks. So, Buildings and Grounds, we looks like we have an interesting scientific STEM lesson here for water lab testing.
Just want to bring you up to speed of the reports that we received that Heath procured related to lead testing in water, and of course, everything passed and Heath. I don't know, John, if you could bring Heath on so he can explain what's a detectable level, but I believe everything was even under what would be anything detectable.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, the lab can only detect down to 0.002 parts per million. I think the highest we had was a 0.005, I think, or 8. So talking with the lab, just because something did show, they indicated to us that could just be their test. It's so close to their maximum that they can go down as low as they can go. To fail, you have to have a 0.15, so we aren't even close to that. The lab's saying to us, what you have, don't even worry about anything. He said that could just be a false test reading type thing. So we're doing these. It's not required. We're doing these just to be on the safe side and be able to say that we have tested our buildings. We do 4 tests in each building. I try to pick different ones each year, and I try to pick areas where people would either drink from the fountain or we possibly would have the kitchen using something to process food. We do take a random one out of a bathroom then too, a lot of times, just in case a kid would go in there and drink out of the spigot. It was done in every building, including the maintenance building and the administration. That would cover any water going out to the baseball field or the new concession stand also.
Okay, Keith, a question here. We're doing this to test our pipes or our structure?
No,
I mean, if we're on city water, why are we doing this?
Because a lot of schools have found, if you go to Philadelphia, most of their tests will not pass because the drinking fountains are so old, they have lead solder in them or lead pipe in them. A lot of their faucets under the floors, there's pipes with lead in them.
Okay, that's what I asked. In other words, we're testing, this is actually being used to test our system, to test our piping and things of that nature.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Because if it's city water, it all should be good. So it's testing the buildings.
Yes, and it also verifies your water coming in from the city is good.
Okay, well, let's hope so, or we're all in trouble.
Yeah, so Heath, my only comment would be, do you do this on like a rotating basis, different locations you pull from every year, or what?
Yes, we don't pull from the same spot every year. We will switch bathrooms, we'll switch sinks in the kitchens, we'll switch water fountains, trying to get different ones. And then the goal is that over the next several years, we get to have all the water fountains tested. We get to have all the faucets in the kitchens tested, all those.
Yeah, I would just want to make sure that Buck Swank and our athletic complex are included in there as well specifically.
Yes, and well, to bring that up, Buck Swank.
And they're high usage areas potentially for people and kids and that sort of thing.
We can start including Buck Swank then. But the turf building and that would have been included in the maintenance building coming back.
And how, when you say it would be included in the maintenance building coming back, what do you mean?
Any of the pipes coming back to that area, because that's fed right off the maintenance building. It comes back, feeds through there, and then feeds right to the maintenance building. The new fixtures that were put in, yes, they could be tested. There's a extremely high guarantee that there's not going to be lead in those, but we will test those next year. It wasn't on the radar for this year. This was done probably about a month ago, these tests.
Okay. That makes sense. Gotcha. I guess I didn't check.
To be
the date.
proactive, I mean, so that if somebody would have an issue or something like that, a parent could ask us and we can say, here's our results, so that they know we are being proactive on maintaining the buildings and making sure they're safe for our kids to drink.
Yeah, there's a school district in the Commonwealth right now where 3 former employees were arrested for covering up lead. Still alleged at this point in that criminal process.
I'm sure you wouldn't do that, Dr. Kepler. I can't get you to have a volleyball game, let alone fight you.
I can guarantee you that.
All right. Any other comments? All right. Thank you, Mr. Dresch. Now we have a photo tour of Northside Elementary.
Yeah, we can't do the real thing right now. Normally when we finish renovations. So Mr. Applequist, the principal at Northside, provided us with a nice representative sample of some of the highlights at Northside.
And as you're bringing that up, I just want to remind our public that if you have a public comment related to buildings and grounds, please raise your hand before we get to item number 3 on the agenda. Thank you.
There, see the cafeteria at Northside.
Wow.
That is awesome.
Yeah, much like no longer the gym. It's a cafegimatorium. The lines are embedded right in the tile.
Wow.
There's the new, this was construction completion, obviously, but the cafeteria divider to lock up the serving line. Glimpse of classroom flooring. And this was back in August before we brought furniture back in. See exterior work of the building. Exterior windows, there you see a finished product.
Ah, nice.
Nice.
Sister school with Forge, the same carpet design and same tile. So I think that's there in the office. You know, this next one, the library, was a big topic with handicap accessibility, allowing us
really nice.
in the pit, but still having access, the railing for wheelchair access to pull up. So it turned out pretty sharp. Next one's the music room. Again. Okay, and again, just showing the brick cleaning and repairs that occurred. And then the one of the main focal points of the project, the next picture, is that secure vestibule. So this shows you from the office side looking out. Here's the main entrance. So secretary can first buzz somebody in from the exterior, and they have to get to this vestibule and through that vestibule before they can go on their way into any part of the building. So this whole piece being new.
One of the big safety features that was added.
Correct.
And might I just say, for my son went to Northside, and maybe I just caught it at a bad time back in the day, but the lighting in that library is literally night and day type of difference in the lighting in there alone.
Yeah. So we're pretty pleased. I mean, there's obviously budget restrictions. Would have loved to do so much more, but from a mechanical perspective, we believe that building's in good shape and aesthetically up to par with our other buildings.
Excellent.
Nice.
So that's our North Side tour during COVID times.
And I mean, probably doesn't picture well, right? But we have the structural things of the items to get up to code and the roof and stuff, right?
Correct.
Fire safety piece that was done actually the summer before, where we had ADA improvements. There's special ed rooms that were added, the egress.
Correct.
We're all part of phase 1.
Lining of the sewer lines under the slab.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, I hate to ask this question, but with the front of the vestibule, is that bulletproof glass?
It is not.
Okay. With these times, you know.
They do that. What we're calling the vestibule, though, I still have to get in from the outside, even into that area first.
That's correct. You're
and then get through those doors yet again.
That's correct.
Correct. I mean, I think we should make that distinction.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't mean you can't shoot out both of the doors, Susan, but they do have to get into.
Yeah, I mean, God
area
forbid,
first through
but
locked doors, right?
Yep.
So.
And marked improvement. I know that was a goal of the board, was safety. So we're pleased with that outcome.
And Darcy, it looks like there's a GISA amendment that you need from us
Yes.
related to the final product here.
Yeah, and these are things that, in the interest of keeping the project on schedule, these were things outside of the scope, but we did authorize these. There was some asbestos detected, so obviously that had to be remediated. There was something where we made some changes to design, so that was that nurse suite. That was at our direction to have some things a little bit more functional there that we had missed, and then some drywall remediation. So those were items that we agreed were beyond the scope and still needed to be done. Our soft cost provision remaining on the job is at 68,000. So that recommendation, that 30,750 would come out of money that we have reserved in remaining reserves over and above the contract for soft costs.
And we need a motion on this, or don't each of these fit within what we authorized you and Mr. Dresch for? I thought 15,000 change orders.
We still bring them back to you. I mean, in this, we don't call this one a change order because GISA projects don't have change orders; they have amendments. So we're formalizing it as an amendment.
Okay. Anything else from my fellow committee board members?
Not for me.
Mr. Connell, I'll turn it over to you then for public comment.
Okay, I have Mrs. Jen Smith.
Hey
Jen,
everyone, how are you?
good, and how are you?
Good. I will be really quick. I just have a question, and I didn't know if I would get another chance to ask a question, so I'm not sure if it really relates to building and grounds, but for our volleyball games, my daughter, she plays on the team, and I'd like to know if you know off the top of your head what the capacity of the gym is. Like, what will the gym hold?
1,100. 20% is 220.
Okay. We have 24 players on our team. That is JV and varsity combined. And if we give them each 2 tickets, that's 48 tickets, right? And I know there's a lot of other districts, and I don't want to do this, but there's a lot of other districts that aren't allowing the opposing teams to even come. So, I mean, if we just assumed that, you know, they had 24 players around that as well, that's 100 people in the gym at any given point. And I know there's been a lot of people that have come to me and said that they have split households, you know, there's step parents involved and things like that. And they're having to take those 2 tickets that they get and share them. And they're not getting to go to see in person their senior play or, you know, their daughter play. Because we're at 1,100 and the number is 20% set by the governor, would it be possible to maybe give everybody on just the Palmyra side maybe 3 or 4 tickets, but only give the opposing team 2 tickets? So that way, at least, because not everybody uses it, and majority of the JV parents don't stay for varsity, and there's a lot of varsity parents that don't stay or come for JV. So it's not even like those full 48 people would be there. So I'm just kind of asking for a suggestion, just to throw it out there, to ask for those couple extra tickets for our home players, just to take care of those people who have a divorced situation where there are step parents involved, just to be able to take care of our Palmyra families.
Dr. Kepler, if I could chime in on that quick, just from one board member's perspective. So, Ms. Smith, I appreciate the comment, and I certainly appreciate the passion and things. I think from my perspective, I think 2 is good. I think 2 is consistent with what we're doing with other sports. 2 is consistent with what other teams are getting the opportunity to do. I wouldn't want to sit there and by every sport do a detailed analysis of every single capacity in every single space and try to adjust specific numbers. And then some sports do get to bring a grandma and grandpa and some don't. I certainly am sensitive to how trying of a time it is. I'm also speaking to you as a parent who had a senior last year who didn't get to play a sport at all. I would really ask our community to look at, instead of glass half empty, glass half full. I think our board is trying very hard to be equitable and fair in a process for all sports, for all of our students, regardless of what activity it is, band, cheerleading, athletics, extracurricular. We're really trying to be equitable. And I would really ask our community to please work with me from the standpoint of a father whose son didn't get to play his sport at all. I would give anything to go back in time and let him play and not see him. He didn't even get to play. And I just ask for our community to please work with us. Please, instead of looking at glass half empty, look at glass half full. And I would also say for all of those from the community in attendance tonight, our voucher system is not for 2 parents only. Our voucher system is for 2 people. So if you have a friend and you know that they're not coming to watch their player, ask them for their voucher for the evening. If we know that number of these parents on volleyball aren't coming to watch, ask them for their voucher. There's no issue with that. We're abiding by our capacity plans. We're abiding by all of the rules and requirements that we've set out. That's just my 2 cents, Dr. Kepler. Mr. Connell, sorry for jumping in, but it's something I feel pretty passionate about, that we need to not do each individual thing, get a different thing that maybe is better for them, but not as good for other student athletes. I think we worked very hard tonight as an example to make sure that we did something for volleyball. And so I want to, make sure that we're trying to be equitable across all of our activities, and also just ask our community and our parents, please look at and be thankful during the pandemic of what you're able to do with your child, and think of what others missed out on, rather than thinking that I don't get to have 4, 5, 6 people come watch my son or daughter. I would just ask us to really, truly try to be compassionate in your approach to this. I know human tendency is, well, why can't we do this? But I think, again, we're trying to be equitable to all of our student athletes and all of our students in extracurricular activities.
Ernie, you want to add anything to that?
I mean, just from our decision making or recommendation was based on large in part of what Jim references there. From a technical standpoint, the answer would be the board would have to authorize that, or with the motion that we approved tonight. So I think from a technical perspective, we just approved specifically 2 tickets in our voting meeting. So we would be ill-prepared or unable to make a change absent a separate vote, in my mind.
Okay. I have no other hands up, so we'll move on to our, next committee meeting, which is finance.
Darcy, did you want me to just pull these up?
Yes, please. Got 3 items to take you through, one for last year, one for this year, and one for next year. So we'll start out, our auditors have, Boyer and Ritter have finished up field work. And as we typically do, we have a series of budgetary transfers where we have funds that are line items where we exceeded budget and line items where we're where we have available funds that we're transferring to clear any of those unfavorable variances. I'll start out just with big picture, where we are now. I mean, we don't have our final released audit, but based on the field work being completed, based on where our estimates were during the budgetary process, where we estimated we'd end up with our unassigned fund balance was $3,443,000. Based on the audit, that's improved by $59,000. So we'd be ending the year with $3,502,000. We had projected that we'd have, we've exceeded, due to mainly to healthcare claims, we're self-insured and those exceeding our budget. We had projected that we'd exceed the expenditures by $102,565. We're actually, that is $67,000 that we've exceeded overall the expenditures. These will be on for a motion at the end of the month, so you have time to look over those. And if you have any specific questions, for example, you might see like where the first one where it looks like a large unfavorable variance on salaries, but there were other salary favorable variances in other accounts to transfer funds to. A lot of times when I prepare the budget, I don't know where substitute provisions are going to fall or where column movement will fall. So that they're typically budgeted for in regular programs, and then we move that money. But overall, we were under budget for salaries. Then Bernie, if you want to just scroll down to the end, the other ones are all very self-explanatory. There where you see one huge entry, that was healthcare. And I'll take you to another handout in a minute. But we were over budget in claims by $760,000. And when we go to that other handout, I can show you how we had a very stable trend for 3 years when we went self-insured, and even 4 years because we knew what the data was for the year before. And this year, we knew early on last year and had reported that to you that mid-year we were over budget by $500,000. So fortunately it settled down and didn't continue getting as on the trend, on the path that it was on. We also got hit with the surcharges are in there. As I mentioned in the comments below the budgetary transfer, that was the experience across the consortium we're in. We had, when I took a deeper dive into the data, we had 20 claimants that were high dollar claimants that were over $100,000 where our stop loss kicked in. And our trend for the previous 3 years was 10. So it really just all of it points to a huge spike in high dollar claimants. I'll stay on this and then we will take a quick look at the claims history. Then the last piece is we are over budget by $67,000. The final audited numbers, we've included a transfer to the cafeteria fund in the amount of $63,000 to cover the loss in the cafeteria fund. And that was We have typically, historically had break-even operations. We've even had years where we've had some surpluses where the cafeteria fund has paid for equipment. This year, due to the closure, or last year, sorry, due to the closure in March and participation numbers, in spite of really incredible efforts by our food service fund to hand out meals and get reimbursement, we still had a loss of 64,000 and need to transfer cash in order to have sufficient cash to run the fund this year. I think we've been working with Nutrition Group, and we've gone to a model where they prepared a weekly break-even analysis so that we can be monitoring it every week. And right now, with how we're delivering or providing meals on the AB schedule, pickups, it does look like we're on track to break even this year, but I still think it's very volatile this year. So, and that cash transfer is necessary. So that's the last piece of that there. Any questions before I jump over? We will take a look. I'll show you just show you quickly the handout on the self-insured claims.
I got to be honest with you, Darcy, the medical claims piece, I'm not sure I quite follow or understand. So
Okay.
I know we exceeded the budget, right?
Right. And
We had the high dollar claims doubled this year from 10 to 20,
Mhm.
right? What do we mean by prompting 3 surcharges?
There's 2 levels of stop loss that we have. We have individual for the district. If it goes over $100,000, there's stop loss coverage. And then we're in a pool with the Lancaster County School Districts, Lebanon and Lancaster County School Districts. And then there's another level where it goes to the pool. So when that pool is tapped out, there are some surcharges, and they're applied to all schools. All schools experience those as members of the consortium.
Okay, thank you.
I know this is a lot of numbers, but I'm showing on here are 3 actual years and this is just claims. This is not what we pay for stop loss, but we had, I can't read it. The average of those 3 years was 2,756,000, very much seeing a stable pattern of claims. And that's what we budgeted 1920 based on, and claims shot up to 3.5 million. So those previous years, we had significant favorable variances. And then when we saw the steady trend there, we did drop the budget. We do have reserves. We still have a reserve. We'll end the year with $1,100,000 that we keep in reserve for health claims. Because when you look at this, where we are so far this year, we're pretty much even with 1920. So at this point, we do not have, we did not bump the budget up this year by 700,000. We bumped it up by a couple 100,000, but not by 700,000. So it is a concern.
I mean, Darcy, just when you look at the claim experience, I don't think it's a HIPAA violation for us to talk about. Do we know if that spike's related to one-time trauma type of instances, or are these related to chronic type of things that we can get any indication of? Is that trend likely to continue, or is it comprised of some one-time type of trauma events?
It's both. Some of them are continuing, and it's, I'm not an expert in this, but the J-class drugs, where it shows up, it's not showing up in prescription, but it's showing up in medical because it may be cancer survivors who are continuing to have customized drugs, just customized for their situation, and they're administered in a doctor's office or a hospital setting. So some of those are continuing. So
The high-end biologics that are being prescribed. And yeah.
there are several that I know have dropped off. So
Yeah, again, I'm not, don't want to try to ask you to go into a lot of detail. It sounds like certainly you've already done that analysis. So I very much appreciate you getting into that detail to get some sense of where we're headed.
Okay.
Next up, 2020, 2021 transportation contracts.
we've had this on the agenda a few times, had given an update last month, where we were with working to negotiate final contracts. We're at the point of making a recommendation for those contracts that would be board motion at the next meeting, 2-year contracts for both Bucks and Boyo, with estimates based on the rates and the formulas that we're recommending. We are still projecting, we're projecting that we'll exceed the budget by 40,000. The big piece of that would be due to added labor. If you see there's a provision there in the Bucks contract of $70,000 for additional cleaning of buses on a daily basis. They've done studies of the time it's taking of an additional hour per day per bus and a half an hour per day per van. There's also provisions that we've negotiated. Last year we had to, when we closed, we negotiated provisions for how we would pay them, and now we're putting that in these contracts that we would pay them under those terms, but only if it's greater than 5 days and up to 90 days, and then we would be back to negotiating again. And at the last meeting, we did provide some comparison data to share with you, what we collected in Lebanon County to show that we believe our rates are very competitive.
So I don't even know if you're going to have an answer for me, Darcy, but with that hour per bus and half an hour per van, is that in between like runs? Is that like secondary and at the end of the day?
At the end of the day.
Yeah, it's making every seat down between runs and end of day.
Yeah. It's actually seems pretty legit.
And then I think we helped that number to a degree is through our health and safety grant. We were able to purchase the cleaning supplies that they're utilizing. Absent that grant, we'd probably be looking at those costs as well. I think that was over $20,000 worth of cleaning agent that we paid through that grant.
That takes care of the whole year.
That's what we have not offered anything else.
Okay.
And so any of that grant or CARES funds, can we pay the labor for cleaning too?
We could spend that money 3 times, I think, on different things. So it's a matter of how we allocate it.
Okay.
We need
it's already spent.
We need that second allocation, and we're told that decisions haven't been made by the state on that second allocation.
Okay.
All right. Any more questions about the transportation contracts? What's up next?
Closure language.
Budget timelines for 2020 or 21.
You jumped ahead, Darcy.
Yeah, you're jumping the gun a little bit. We still have closure language and.
Oh, that's what I was referring to. That we put that closure language in. that it would be paying either 40% or 49%, depending on which contract, for greater than 5 days and no more than 90 days. And then we would negotiate after that.
I don't know how well that sits with everyone, but doesn't sit well with me.
You know, it's an improvement on having a totally open and, you know, putting the language in that they initially requested. And that came from both of them. It was not to put that language in to cover the entire contract. It was told by the contractors, by our contractors, that this is standard language in larger contracts. And I was able to verify that with a neighboring district that has used two of the larger contractors, and they have had that in all of their contracts, regardless of COVID. Completely open-ended, you know, that it's
yeah.
unless,
And I don't, no, whatever. I said my piece last time. I don't want to be the one carrying the water all the time, quite honestly. I
49% seems like a big number.
I think pre-COVID, 90 days makes sense. We didn't anticipate things. Now that we've learned from it and we know what the likelihood is of this occurring, and thinking that we're going to pay somebody 50% for 90 days.
Half the year.
Closure last year didn't last 90 days.
Yep. So is that 90 working days, or is that is that 3 months, or is that
90 school days?
90 school days?
We closed March 13th. School doesn't go till June 13th.
That was it was 47 days.
Yeah. Yeah. That's from
feel-
December. Basically, in a month and a half, we're on the hook for half the contract.
Yep.
I'm just trying to be realistic of what's going on. I mean, I'm putting this in, this was a compromise that we, you know, went back to them and
Look, I think the Bucks family is a wonderful family. I know them well. I don't have anything bad to say about them. This is business, and to me, I just don't know how many businesses get paid 50% of their contract not to perform.
Yeah. I don't like it.
And so I mean, I don't want to keep arguing about it. I know you're trying, Darcy, and it may be very much the standard. I just can't get comfortable with it. So that's, I mean, I think for me, I just can't, I can't support it. But I mean, there's plenty of other board members who may feel very differently.
I don't support it. This is really crazy.
I'd be happy to support looking for other contracts, but
So this contract is going to be up for on the next regular board meeting, Darcy?
yes, yeah, it's for this year that we're in, and it's 2 years, this year and next year,
When's the contract year run?
through 21,
No,
21, 22.
July to
fiscal year of the
June.
contract.
July to June, August to June. What's the month duration? Like,
Through June 30th.
okay,
Yeah, if COVID hadn't hit, we had agreement on a tentative contract that we would have had board approval. I had presented at the first board meeting in March, and we had tentative agreement. We would have had, I mean, we normally aren't negotiating contracts in after the school's year's already started, but
no, I
it was an
understand.
ongoing back
Yeah.
and forth.
I get it. It's just, you know, we had that clause, the closure clause in the contract for many years before, correct?
No, we didn't. We didn't have anything.
Think.
And that, So
We would have just renegotiated with them like we did last year, Chris, and negotiated and, come to some number.
Yeah, this seems extreme.
Agreed.
Excessive.
So if you put it on the agenda and it doesn't pass,
We don't have a contract.
we don't have a contract.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, the state of the world we live in today, and the budget crunch and everything else we're dealing with, we're not paying for outdoor ed, but we're going to pay for buses that run that aren't running if we happen to close. And it's a big if, right? But that if is a lot more likely today than it was a year ago.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's where the game has changed.
yeah, and I don't want to give a bad impression of our local contractors because I'm seeing articles out there that just there was another one today and that was in the PASBO. If you get the daily PASBO newsletter about the danger of the busing industry.
Yeah, and I get it. But at the same time, you need protection too, right?
Yeah.
Are there other busing people we've looked into or can look into, or is there any other busing places people to reach out to and ask what their
I don't believe that's a practical solution right now in the middle of the year.
And Darcy, correct me if I'm wrong, what we're seeing and hearing other contractors, those that would be large enough to come in and do something like that, this is the language that are in their contracts.
Right.
Phew.
And it was 180 days. I mean, the language I got from another district, it was not this language. It was less than 180.
And the bigger issue I have is 90 school days is half the school year.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to clarify 3 months versus 6 months of the school year.
It's double, right? And that's the.
I mean, what have they provided as their justification that in order to stay in business, they have to get 50% of payment to not perform? In your negotiation with them, Darcy, when everybody's like, this is how it has to be, it has to be, it has to be. What are they offering to substantiate the position? Are they just saying, well, somebody else got it? Yeah. Because I'm very curious how in the world they have to make 50% revenue to have no cost. And that's what they need in order to stay in business? Is that what they've literally said in the negotiation? Because that seems, I would love for them to bring that to the community and be in my shoes and have to answer for that.
I think it's comparable to what I was seeing that was negotiated in other districts, but I know you just said that's not the argument you want to hear. But I looked back to several years ago when we were negotiating with Boyo, and they had provided us with a formula of what their fixed costs are. So I had that to go back to that was done independently prior to COVID, and that was around the 40%. And then Bucks provided detail of what their fixed costs to maintain, maintain a fleet. You have a fleet that you're paying debt service on buses, insurance, facilities, that management, maintaining.
And my point would be, they'd be the only business I've ever encountered where all of those things represent 50% of their operating margin. Mm-hmm. We're a business. Is 50% of our costs tied up in debt service and insurance? Because I'm thinking importantly,
70% of our
we know
business
75% of our payment is in salaries and benefits,
salaries and benefits.
which if we're closed for that long, they aren't paying anybody. They're going to lay them off. And so I'm trying to understand where we honestly think debt service and insurance, there's no maintenance on the vehicles, they aren't running. There's no fuel on the vehicles, they aren't running. Their employees would be laid off and collecting unemployment. And so we're saying that for them to stay in business, 50% of all revenue they collect goes to operating costs just on debt service for the fleet and insurance.
There's more detail than that, but that's, yes.
That may be the only business that I would know of that has fixed costs that somehow when you're not operating represent 50% of your basis. I don't know how they stay in business to begin with. When you add in salaries and benefits and fuel and actual maintenance when the vehicles are running.
Is this the like end all be all the contract? Like, is there any more negotiation in it, or are they done? Is this like, they're not gonna, like, if we come back with something, they're not gonna, like, did they already say this is our final answer?
Sorry, my leg just went out.
Darcy's done. She's going home.
Yeah, I left. I don't know. I wouldn't have put something in front of you that I thought was wildly different than what are in other contracts. I mean, it's just not. It's not. But if you want to, if there's no
realize
support,
that everything isn't apples to apples.
yeah. If there's no support,
Our tax
for it,
base isn't the same as others.
I
mean, it just.
Yeah,
no, our costs are significantly lower than others. I mean, when I do cost per mile studies, we're the second lowest in the IU of what we're paying.
So I think from the budget standpoint, I don't have any issues there. My bigger issue is with the addendum for school closure. So I don't think, Darcy, you're going to have any support if you bring this to vote.
Okay.
Now, if you want to bring the contract with the addendum that says, you know, something has to be worked out or mutually agreed, that's fine. But I just, what I'm hearing, and I know we don't have a full board here, but I'm pretty much guarantee I'd be surprised if any board member voted for it.
Well, I have a couple questions, or at least in comments, because I've been listening to what you all have to say. And I think Darcy said one thing, and I just like you to restate it. Where do we stand as far as the rates we pay compared to other districts in the IU?
We pay formula, which with some slight variations, but when you pay based on state formula, that is a way to keep your costs as low as possible. It rewards contractors for having the most efficient runs as possible and designing those runs that you maximize. Kids are on the bus for more miles than they're on the buses without miles. That's the basis for the subsidy that we get from the state. So by everything I've studied over the years, webinars on transportation, paying on formula is the most efficient way to pay. And it's something when the Auditor General is out there doing school audits, they look at what you submit for subsidy and they see how close the basis is for subsidy to formula. And I remember a couple of years ago, Pasquale, had a press conference about school districts that were paying significantly above formula. So that's one thing that I point to when I look at the costs, how low the costs are we pay for. My best basis for comparison to other districts is cost per mile. You don't want to look at cost per student. You could, there's wide variation of geographic differences. So cost per mile to me is the fairest way. And there's the IU collects data on transportation contracts. Not every district submits, but most do, and total miles. So that's what I use to benchmark us against other districts in the IU. And cost per mile, we are the second lowest. If you look at our transportation contracts in total, special ed and regular ed divided by miles traveled.
Okay. This is something I've seen repeatedly in some of the issues that we talk about here on the board, where we seem to get more for the buck than anybody else. And of course, that's a tribute to the board, that's a tribute to the district, that's a tribute to you. But you reach a point where even though you may not like what we're being asked to pay, it's still a better deal than basically anybody else has in the IU.
Do they pay for gas too, or are we paying for?
Gas is built into the contract as well, into the formula. So we pay the formula, and then they use our pumps because we participate in a consortium and get gas at bulk purchasing, and then we deduct the cost of the gas we pay from the contract.
And Darcy has just said that this is the way the world is at this particular moment. Do we really think that we're going to get a better deal someplace else? I like somebody to convince me of that. I mean, I hear people talking outrage and they shouldn't be doing this and we shouldn't be paying it, but I just don't see anybody else getting a better deal and accomplishing anything better.
So
if we reject this, then what are we going to do? And where are we going to be? And I just constantly see this, that we end up worse off than what we started.
I think if you look at it like this, right, it's about risk. And do we get a better deal? Absolutely. But that better deal comes through planning, not necessarily that we're getting a huge price break, right? That's where the deal comes. The bus company gets a reward from the state for that.
No, they don't. It's our subsidy. I mean,
it's our subsidy, right? But I think the thing, if you look at this, right, if it's $1.6 million, right, and to make it real, if our estimated cost with this contract for 1 year is $1.6 million, and we go out halfway through school, that represents $794,000. That's my issue. For no service.
Mm-hmm.
That's my bigger issue.
I have no issue with the rate, Larry.
Yeah.
I have a fundamental issue on morals and principle, and even just negotiating in good faith. I work for a CPA firm. Do you think we put into our contract, if for some reason we don't do your audit, you still pay us half the fee? And my clients would agree to that? We still have fixed costs.
Mm-hmm.
We're pretty price competitive. I'm not gouging them on rates. We do a good job. I think the bus company does a great job on the rates they're charging us. I have no issue with that. I have an issue with the fact of somebody telling me that to survive by being shut down, you need to get 50% of your contract to not do anything. There's short-term impacts and long-term. If we want to work on a graduated scale, 49% for 5 to 14 days, 40% for 14 to whatever, 30%, and work it down, I'm fine with that too.
Okay, well,
but to say that you're going to be out of it, you're just not going to even do anything. And to Chris's point, you'll make $700,000 to not do anything. That's not a question of the rate, or are they being competitive on the pricing? That's us just trying to manage risk of another COVID situation or the state shutting us down again. And then we're back to having another tax discussion on what choice do we have but to raise taxes because we paid several hundred thousands of dollars to a company that didn't do anything for us.
Yeah, and I just want to point, it would be 25% of the contract because it would be 50% of 50%.
So over 400 and some, over $400,000, over $400,000.
Okay.
Right?
Just
Which is
Okay.
not a small amount of our budget.
I mean, you guys probably understand this a lot better than I do. I just hear Darcy telling me this is the best deal. We're not going to get a better deal. This is the way it is. And okay, if we want to reject this, where are we going to be? I just want to look at all aspects, one way or the other, because I'm concerned about not accepting this. So give me an option that works, other than the fact that we're outraged that they're going to ask for this. That doesn't help me when at the end of the day, we don't have bus services. I just don't see any other options here. But
I think the hypothesis there, Larry, is just something I don't agree with. So your assumption is if we don't vote and approve this, no matter what, Bucks is just going to shut down service and fire all their people tomorrow. I don't believe that that's the only other option on their end either.
No.
Have you ever worked without a teacher contract?
Yeah, for about 2.5 years.
Yeah. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about managing risk. And to me, I'd rather prolong the negotiation if they won't come to the table and show me. I don't need Darcy to do the work. I don't know why Darcy's doing this, respectfully. It's not Darcy's job to prove to the board here why 49% of their cost has to be covered. If they're negotiating with us, let them prove it. Put the stuff in front of me that shows what their fixed costs are, not Darcy putting it together for them, not Darcy using, well, the IU gave me this. Let them prove it. It's their job in the negotiation to do that. And all I'm saying, Larry, is why aren't we continuing to negotiate? Because we're fearful they're just going to fire everybody tomorrow, sell off all their buses and go out of business if we don't sign this?
Okay, question. When do we really have to make a decision? Do we really have to make a decision in 2 weeks, or can you continue to negotiate? What's the timeline here?
we're in the contract right now. We're 2.5 months into the contract we're negotiating. It's just whatever your level of discomfort is of not having a contract.
So let's go back. So again, this is slated to be voted on in 2 weeks. We have 2 weeks to go back to Bucks and try and get something that's more palatable. And if we do, then we'll carry it forward. And if we don't, as you know, we'll have to extend it for another 2 weeks till the next meeting.
Okay, I can live with that.
They're not going to say, no, we're going to stop doing your bus service, because I mean, that would be stupid on their part.
Yeah,
I think if we keep going back to them and show them our, just approval on it, it's going to sink in, and they're going to think, hey, we need to change this.
Yeah, and I don't want to come across as ungrateful, because Bucks has been a great partner.
100%.
And that's not.
Can't they like come in? Can we have like a special meeting or something that they can come in and we can throw these questions at them as to why they want to charge us 49% and get on their thinking and their understanding? Because we're a business, they're a business. We have to find out something.
Sure. I think that could be. So why don't we do this? Here's what my suggestion would be. Darcy, just go back and meet with Bucks and
No,
probably.
I think the better idea. I mean, I like that idea. I think I think I probably should be removed from the process at this point. And if you want to have those discussions,
Could do that too.
I think that's appropriate.
I mean, we set up committees to negotiate other contracts. I don't care if we set up another committee here to meet with these folks and get a better understanding. If they have the detail to show us how this has to exist in order for them to survive and not be profiteering off of it, I'd be different. I just don't like our business manager doing their work for the negotiations. Well, I looked at other things from other IUs. Well, it's
Not up to her.
we know the other ones are paying more. We know we've been blessed with what we have. That's not the question. The question is, why won't they give us a longer term deal? Why have they talked about all the uncertainty of them not being in this business period in a year or two anyways? And if we're going to end up having to face paying 20, 25% more, I'd rather start dealing with that now. I just think there's all these factors, and I don't think it's our job to negotiate on their behalf. It's their job to show and justify why they need 49% payment just to continue to exist when they're not working.
Okay, so who wants to be on the committee? Jim, Sue?
I will.
Depending on what night you guys want to meet, I'd be happy to sit in.
Okay, so you have 3,
Okay.
and then we just need somebody to coordinate.
Yeah, I wouldn't see that this will be back on at the end of October or at the next meeting.
Okay.
Moving on to the next fun topic of conversation.
An even better one.
Ooh, even better one.
Just a calendar. This we can deal with.
Yeah. It's a warning of what's to come.
Yep.
Woo! Just the state index, the statewide index under Act 1 is 3%. And then each district receives an adjusted index based on market value personal income aid ratio. And our adjusted index is 3.8%. So that means that taxes cannot be raised above 3.8% unless we would either go to referendum or provide exceptions. And I believe the only exception we'll qualify for is special ed. I should have that number at the next board meeting. So that's what we're working under Act 1. If you look at the color-coded chart there, we have different things that are our internal administration dates, Act 1 dates, and then what's in blue are board meeting dates. We have on there to have a preliminary budget in December. I don't see us having the level of hard detail that we typically have that early. I mean, we're working a lot of estimates middle of the year as it is, but I see us working under even more uncertainty for this budget process. The teacher contract expires at the end of this year. We've already experienced an increase in cyber charter schools by 50 students. So there's uncertainty there about building that in. That's an increase of at least $500,000 in our budget this year. Whether or not that's something that resumes to more normal levels in the following year, that's just one example of uncertainty there. And certainly revenues, the revenue streams, as I had reported earlier, we've already seen that EIT income is down 16% year to date this year. So we certainly could use more time in the budget process to have better data of where our revenue trends are going. We know the state they approved a full year's budget for us this year, but the rest of their budget, they only did a 5-month. We're certainly optimistic that there could be more stimulus money. So haven't built this budget timeline with the same, I'll just say precision or with an expectation of precision, but tried to build in, sorry, the light went out again. Tried to build in just more discussions about what our model will look like. Discussions about we cut $2 million out of last year's budget, build in time to prioritize restoring cuts that we are unlikely to be sustainable. So that's kind of just some general comments about how the timeline was developed, at least for the first 3 months. After February, it looks pretty much like our typical budget timeline, with needing a proposed budget to be approved in May and final budget adopted in June.
Okay.
So much good news, it's hard to handle. Okay. Any questions from the board? There's one hand raised, Chris, if you'd like to.
So Dave Laudermilk, could you say hi, please, Dave?
Hi there.
There you go. Okay. You have the floor.
On the bus contract, which I found to be a riveting conversation, it was pretty enlightening. I would say that one thing, there doesn't seem to be any protection for us, and I never would have even asked this question except tonight. CD, their bus company, is going to close for a week or 7 business days, something like that. It seems like, shouldn't there be some protection for us on our side if they had all their drivers out for 2 weeks? Shouldn't we get something back or a reduction or something?
A very good point, Dave.
But that's just my 2 cents. Like if they're asking to protect themselves, we should ask to protect ourselves as well. We're as much on a risk. I mean, I guess unless we couldn't find emergency bus transportation, like if that would just not be a solution, but we would have to cover that. Like, let's say whoever does the Lebanon School District said, yeah, we could cover that, but it would cost you X, and that was 25% more than this bus company calls us. We shouldn't be on the hook for that, but I don't know. It just seems like there's nothing in there for us. If ultimately this is going to work through and get negotiated, and they're going to get covered for something, it seems like we should be covered for something as well.
Yeah, good point.
But that's all I had.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Okay, we're done with Finance Committee, so we'll move on to Staffing and Administration.
Okay, we're gonna make this real easy for you here. So, unlike the other 2 committees. Okay, Bernie, do you want to say anything?
I will.
Hopefully the topics match the text. But Jim will let us know if they don't.
I will try.
The 3, all 6 of these policies are derived from the regular PSBA policy service recommendations. The latter 3 center around recent legislation adding requirements, or additional requirements about sudden cardiac arrest, that we have to include information regarding EKG in the athletic documents that are given to students and their families. Very limited changes. In fact, some of them, it's only a citation of that law without even any language changes. The items relative to special education, again, have the recommendations from PSBA. In some cases, it's changing his/her to their. So with that said, I would just encourage you to read those, 6 of those. And if you have any questions, let me know. They're incredibly minimal changes.
Yeah, I've already gone through the first 4. They at least all line up, Mr. Connell. And to Dr. Kepler's points, I've only seen 4 words changed so far.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so we'll come to public comment. And I see the name looks like Triana Groff. Can you say hi?
Hi, hello, my name is Trina Groff, and I'm here this evening to bring to the attention to the board a growing concern I have of poor leadership that is negatively affecting the morale, growth, and development of our students in high school sports. I just want to bring a couple sightings to give you some examples. A senior football player recently was benched during senior night game because he had to miss the prior game because he couldn't call off of work. When the player explained to his coach that he'd be fired if he'd miss work, the coach said, "Too bad, football first." When a player from the soccer team went to the coach and the athletic director about bullying on the soccer team, the actions of how to handle it was turned back on the player, who was afraid of repercussions from a team who was already bullying him, rather than the leaders that he relied on. when a player from the soccer team approached a coach after senior night about lack of playtime for his teammates during this special game. The coach stated, "Senior night is a stupid American tradition. If this is the coach's opinion, why are they coaching on a high school level?" When the football coach was informed of bullying on his team, his response was to address the team as a whole and say, "We are one," which only increased the bullying, and still nothing is done. I have firsthand experience. The coach, Bob Gump, was a coach for 20 years at Hershey High School, and during his time there at Hershey, he was called out for inappropriate remarks to players. He is now hired as an assistant coach for our team, and was recently referring to a player as a girl on the team because his ears are pierced. We continue to allow parents to be hired as coaches who then use their powers to benefit their own children at the cost of other players. A soccer player recently went to a coach on how to get more playtime, and rather than give him constructive goals, the coach attacked him on a personal level. These are just some of the examples that have occurred in sports in Palmyra. This conduct goes against the integrity of high school sports. High school sports are supposed to be about teamwork, growth, development of young men and young women. Coaches should be role models for our youth. I am a healthcare worker. I have recently noticed a complete rise in depression and anxiety in our teens with everything that's going on in the world today. Adding to more stress are these coaches and the way that they are treating our young youth. I hope you address these issues and put a stop to the continuing poor leadership in our sports that negatively affect our youth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think
Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think one of the things that I would advise parents, and I assume, Triana, that you don't have, I don't know if you have kids in each of the sports you mentioned, but if I would highly advise parents that if there's an issue, that they contact the athletic director and speak of that issue. That's the best way to handle it. And in the event there is a chain of command that can be followed, if you feel that your concern or issue is not properly addressed, that we follow that chain of command. But again, I've seen this for a long time. The best, and I can say this really from just personal experience as well as what I've seen here on the board. People have issues with coaches, go to the athletic director, because you have to talk to the athletic director for action to happen. And again, if action isn't fitting your what you expect the outcome to be, then you go to the building principal. And then if the building principal is not meeting your desired outcome, then we stop at the superintendent.
Yeah, Dr. Kepler, I'm hoping and assuming this is kind of new information as far as you're aware through the athletic department?
All but one item was new information to me.
Okay, so I mean, again, Ms. Groff, I would just echo what Mr. Connell said. I mean, I think it's imperative to get those concerns in front of our athletic department. Let them address them, work those through with you, talk through the details. These are very difficult things to deal with in generality at this level. But I would encourage you to follow Mr. Connell's guidance and raise those concerns to our athletic department so that they can be assessed and investigated and brought to the board accordingly if there's issues or follow-up necessary.
Okay, so no other comment. At this time, we will close the public session of our committee meetings. It is 9:07. Let's meet back on the executive session Zoom meeting link at 9:17. Sound like a plan?
Okay, thank you.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.